Wheels, the Second Cycle. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Newgatenovelist, Algy Pug, Eva Davis, and Nemo. Preface, Armchair, in Bad Taste Too, by Osbert Sitwell. If I were still of handsome middle age, I should not govern yet, but still should hope to help the prosecution of this war. I'd talk and eat, though not eat wheaten bread. I'd send my sons, if old enough, to France, or help to do my share in other ways. All through the long spring evenings, when the sun pursues its primrose path towards the hills, if fine, I'd plant potatoes on the lawn. If wet, write anxious letters to the press. I'd give up wine and spirits, and with pride refuse to eat meat more than once a day, and seek to rob the workers of their beer. The only way to win a hard-fought war is to annoy the people in small ways. Bully or patronize them as you will. I'd teach poor mothers, who'd got 7 sons, all fighting men of clean and sober life, how to look after babies and to cook. Teach them to save their money and invest. Not to bring children up in luxury, but do without a nursemaid in the house. If I were old, or only 70, then should I be a great man in his prime. I should rule army corps. At my command men would rise up, salute me, and attack, and die. Or I might also govern men by making speeches with my toothless jaws, chattering constantly, and men should say, one grand old man is still worth half his pay. That day, I'd send my grandsons out to France, and wish I'd got 10 other ones to send. One cannot sacrifice too much, I'd say. Then would I make a noble toothless speech, and all the listening Parliament would cheer. Gentlemen, we will never end this war till all the younger men with martial mien have entered capitals, never make peace till they are cripples on one leg or dead. Then would the bishops all go mad with joy. Cantour, Ebor, and the other ones be overwhelmed with pious ecstasy and thanking him we'd got a Christian, an Englishman, still worth his salt, to talk. In every pulpit they would preach and prance, and our great church would work, as heretofore, to bring this poor old nation to its knees. Then we'd forbid all liberty and make free speech a relic of our impious past. And when this war is finished, when the world is torn and bleeding, cut and bruised to death, then I'd pronounce my peace terms to the poor. But, as it is, I am not 90 yet, and so must pay my reverence to these men, these grand old men who still can see and talk, who sacrifice each other's sons each day. O Lord, let me be 90 yet, I pray. Methuselah was quite a youngster when he died. Now, vainly weeping, we should say, another great man perished in his prime. Oh, let me govern, Lord, at 99. End of Preface. This recording is in the public domain. Fountains by Osbert Sitwell. The graven fountain masks suffer and weep. Carved with a smile, the poor mouths clutch at a half-remembered song, striving to forget the agony of ever laughing. Sacheverell Sitwell. Some fountains sing of love, in full and flute-like notes that charge the night, with all the red-mouthed essence of the rose. Then turn to voices murmuring above, among the trees of hidden sweet delight. Another fountain flows with the faint music of a first spring breeze. Each falling drop is jeweled by the moon to some fine luminous ecstasy of light. It sings of noon, of sunlit blossoms on a first spring day, and all things sweet and pleasant to the sight. Another fountain sings of the cool pleasures of those moonlit hours when dappled sylvan things trample through thickets and through secret bowers to prance and play, or, squatting round in rings, to wreathe their horned young heads with wan sweet flowers till dawn comes grey and sweeps them to the wood. Another fountain sobs its song of passions that have passed away. Then with a sound like threatening rolling drums, it throbs and bursts into a flood of fierce wild music, and its savage spray becomes the blood renewed of crimes long past. Another fountain sings its song of fear, of rustics flying fast before some foe, a deadly unknown foe that comes so near they feel his panting breath and run for many a lengthy panic mile. Those graven fountain masks are white with woe. Carved with a happy smile, they strive to weep, end their eternal laughing, for a while to lose themselves in sleep, or in the silver peacefulness of death. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Promenades by Osbert Sitwell. Long promenades against the sea, kaleidoscopic, chattering, pavilions rising from the sea, on which a fawning, flattering, hot crush of Orientals move, and sell their cheap and tawdry wares to other Jews and aldermen and rich retired provincial mayors. Oh, many colors in the sun, copper and gold predominate. Parasols held 'gainst the sun throw down their shadows inchoate on leering faces looking sly, all shining with the heat of June. The shifting masses move and talk and whistle tunes, all out of tune. Long promenades against the sea, and oranges and mandolins, pavilions rising from the sea, and penny in the slot machines. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Prospect Road by Osbert Sitwell. To Edith. Gigantic houses, tattered by all time, raise their immense and ruined bulk and height in one unending universal street. Against a strange and sullen yellow sky, like sunset trickling through into the sea, down to the depths, yellow and gray and green. Blind windows face the interminable road. Innumerable those windows seem to stretch, all smeared and stained and stamped with time and blood. Stains that seem faces, horrid twitching masks, moving their lewd derisive lips and tongues, spitting out treacheries with vampire lips. Or eyes that gaze from far blank stretching walls, the tortured eyes of those who see their death approaching eon by eon along this road. Behind the walls sound voices whispering of dire and hidden, carefully hidden, thoughts cruel, wicked, and unfathomable things that lie behind this infamy of stone. Then clamor shrieking voices, or a pause that falls like lead through the suspended air, broken by laughter, rending piercing sounds that seem to tear the fabric of our minds. Slinking along these wicked, stricken walls, I reached a shining, distant point of light, and glory came, vast and unending light, rays, flashing, writhing rays of light, and then the music sounded. Ah, that sound! Cadences rose and fell unendingly, quivering, shining waves of sound and sight, sounds of the universe, the cries of space and planets tumbling wildly round our world, showing the meaning of the meaningless. God and eternity, strange flashing sounds, the whirl of time, Melchizedek, glory of God in space, the universe, like framing words, Gog and Magog, infinity, the rush of waters, and the sky comes down, down with the splintering stars. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Ragtime by Osbert Sitwell. The lamps glow here and there, then echo down the vast, deserted vistas of the town. Each light the echoed note of some refrain, repeated in the city's fevered brain. Yet all is still, save when there wanderers pass, finding the silence of the night too long. Some tattered wretch who, from the night outcast, sings with an aching heart a comic song. The vapid parrot words flaunt through the night, silly and gay, yet terrible. We know men sang these words in many a deadly fight, and threw them, laughing, to a solemn foe. Sang them where tattered houses stand up tall and stark, and bullets whistle through the ruined street, and live men tread on dead men in the dark, and skulls are sown in fields once sown with wheat. Across the sea, where night is dark with blood and rockets flash, and guns roar hoarse and deep, they struggle through entanglements and mud, they suffer wounds and die, but here they sleep. From far away, the outcast's vacuous song re-echoes like the singing of a throng. His dragging footfalls echo down the street and turn into a myriad marching feet. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Gypsy Queen by Osbert Sitwell. A ragged gypsy walked the road. Her eyes blaze fierce and strong, but she gazed at me as on she strode. She fiercely gazed and long. "Give me a penny, sir," she said, "to buy me drink and buy me bread, for I've nothing had to eat or drink, and at night I never sleep a wink. Cold is the snow and wet the rain, but my soul died when my love was slain." Fair gypsy, in some far southern clime, I've seen your face before, in some far other distant time, but whom are you weeping for? "'Twas Antony I loved," she said, "for him in vain I shed these tears, but my love to Antony is dead these long 2000 years. Then I was once great Egypt's pride, and feared by friend and foe, yet they believe Cleopatra died 2000 years ago. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Return of the Prodigal by Osbert Sitwell. I lay awake in that dim room of fear which seemed to hold the essence of the night clutched in the grip of its tall sentient walls. Dark walls and high, that stretch for ever up to the darkness, vague and menacing, as if no light could ever penetrate that mist of shadows, only cast a gloom more cavernous upon the atmosphere, but seems to thicken into cloudy shapes, substantiate, then disappear and die. And all the room is full of whisperings, of moving things that hope I do not heed. And sudden gusts of wind blow cold upon my head, lifting the heavy mantle of the air, revealing for an instant some vague thought snatched from the haunting lumberland of dreams. Far in the distance, from the open night, sounds an insistent hooting from the wood. The owl is calling to its kindred things. The bat emits its sinful, piercing note, so high one cannot hear it, only feel the rhythm beat within the shrinking ear. A faint breeze blows in from the countryside, rustling the curtains with a forest breath, stirring the grass of many an unknown tomb, some new, some immemorably old, whose dwellers never heard an owl at night, only the reptile sounds and beating wings of some forefather of that bird of night. Some flapping, scaly monster with huge wings. Then, sudden, through the rustling of the room, silence shrills out its startling trumpet call of terror, and the house is frozen still. Despair dropped down like rain upon my heart, catching my breath and clutching at my throat. Fear magnified my senses, and my brain could hear beyond the threshold of this world. Then through the threatening silence of the house, the silent waiting for the coming play, there came that halting, well-remembered tread, that dreadful limp and dragging of the feet, that cruel, sin-white face looked through the door, and in my scream that rent the trembling air, reaching the woods and tainting them with death, filling the fountain with strange ripplings that make the moon's reflection but a mask like to that face of shame, my soul passed out. Out of my ashen lips to find its end. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. London by Osbert Sitwell. I love the cruel contrasts of the city, an artist work that fools consider muddle. As much a muddle as a winter sky whose fiercely piled up clouds of black and grey are shot with fitful gleams of golden light. As much a muddle as the aged trees, whose branches burst with blinding green each spring. I love the palaces of iron and stone that proudly lift their heads to look upon the havoc and the evil they have wrought. On small black shops already near their doom, whose modest wares lie hidden from the street behind an old curved window, tightly closed. I love the houses, russet brown with smoke, which men pull down with eager cruelty, with willing wanton hands that pick and pluck old sagging papers from dismantled walls, that show their silly cornices of plaster, display their dreary marbled fireplaces in all their shocking nudity, like Noah, the laughing-stock of gay and growing streets. The broken doll's house of a growing child. This is the crushing of the old ideals, the end of what our fathers dreamt so fair. I love to live where wealth and slums conjoin, to show their vivid, tragic artistry. The beggars watching motor cars roll by, the shaking houses where the traffic winds its endless shambling errand for the town. Its rolling echoes deep as muffled drums, yet eager with a searching, strident note. I love the narrow streets towards the east, the streets with stalls of flowers and eatables, smelling of gardens, orchard farms, and downs, with stalls of crockery and handkerchiefs, all slashed with paisley Indian designs, and whelks piled high upon a wheelbarrow that almost smells of tar and salt and sea. The women with strange, brightly colored shawls, the Europeans, Jews, and coster carts. I love the broader streets, which yet are poor, with frightening alleys leading out of them, the broad streets planted with young trees nigh dead, and tall black lampposts that stand far apart as tall and black and proud as the police. The uniform monotony is spoilt by churches with queer, ugly spires of stone that offer future joy for present pain. The painted trams pass with metallic clatter. The street is set with shops that smell of eels, with hat shops full of gaudy colored hats, with dentists, pawnbrokers, and butcher shops. Strange Asiatic script is placarded against the yellow gloomy frontages, amongst which sometimes can be seen a break, a red-tiled country cottage left behind, or crowded plaster palace where are shown strange crimes, where cowboys rescue girls, where forgers are discovered by police, where comic men collapse and crush their hats, the moving pictures, peep shows for the poor. I love the business thoroughfares and roads where all the wealth of London circulates, so full of people that at noon the streets are black, an ant-heap overturned, at night deserted and forlorn as Babylon. The streets, plain planted where the poor can see the royal processions and their progresses, where feathered ladies drive to drawing rooms, where all is ugly, calm, and feelingless. I love the height of that cathedral tower, whose solemn, lovely vaults of yellow brick are strewn, confetti-like, with marbles rare. I love St. Paul's proud air of isolation, so distant and aloof and grandiose, that gloomy bulk of sombre, ink-black stone, yet seared by shadows white as driven snow. I love the wistful monument to Albert, whose glowing Gothic colors gaze across toward the classicism of the concert hall. I love the park, its vivid summer flowers, its crowd of silly people smartly dressed, and, standing grouped about the other end, the beggars and deported aliens who listen to a crazy clergyman, unbalanced politician, or to those who sing the patent virtues of a pill. Or hear the views of some poor pale Hindu explaining theories to a scoffing crowd, or mock the Bacchic singing of some sect who hymn the Almighty in a ragtime strain, a sect of sallow women, spectacled, of men with faces earnest and unshaved. I love Park Lane and its inhabitants, its oriental curious pageantry. I love the Regent's houses and his arch, Buckingham Palace, Selfridge's, the Mint, the Tower of London and the Beefeaters, Cleopatra's Needle, and the blind poor man who stands in Piccadilly all day long. I love the country perfume of the carts that thunder down our streets each early morn, watched by those sad, unhappy things of night. That wretched, lowly, undiscovered race who pace the pavement all their fevered lives. I love the embankment and its thin, poor trees, the scaffolding, the cranes, and the cement which will one day form beauteous palaces. I love Blackfriars, the noise from Waterloo, Somerset House, Savoy Hotel, the grounds in which the Watergate stands put away. I love the Adelphi Terrace and its view. I love Trafalgar Square, its Landseer lions, St. Martin's in the Fields, and Charing Cross, the busy roaring traffic of the Strand. I love the silly pleasures of the rich, the shops that sell unheard of novelties. I love the docks and all their merchandise, the Lascars and the Chinamen, the quays, the public houses and the rich hotels, the music halls and theaters, and the queues that wait like flunkies on prosperity. How I love London and its daily life, the very blood and heartbeat of the world. London. End a poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Alien by Aldous Huxley. A petal drifted loose from a great magnolia bloom. Your face hung in the gloom, floating, white and close. We seemed alone, but another bent o'er you with lips of flame, unknown, without a name, hated, and yet my brother. Your one short moan of pain was an exorcising spell. The devil flew back to hell. We were alone again. End a poem. This recording is in the public domain. By the Fire by Aldous Huxley. We two sit by the fire, while haunting devils of beauty laugh and dance fantastic as sunlit motes, and spin like a whirlwind of winnowed chaff. A swift bright tumult of notes. And we two sit by the fire, sit and drowse like sleeping dogs in the equipoise of all desire, cradled warm twixt thought and will, and always behind the music sounds the still small hiss and whisper of green logs slow burning on the fire, like the sound of water falling far away, a little wind-blown falling stream, a thin gray ghost in a world of gray mist and mountains, a white steam and a smoke as blue as distance rise from the damp hissing logs that show a glimpse of the red fire below. Two candles watch with tireless eyes, while we sit drowsing by the fire. Dimly I know there exists a world, that there is time, perhaps, and space other and wider than this place, where, at the fireside drowsily curled, we sit and listen to the music's flow and the hiss of the logs, and watch the flames burn on unblinking. And I know as well that there are other people, and their names go echoing through my brain from cell to cell, like the changingly reverberated shout of waiters mournful along corridors. But no one carries the orders out. And the names, dear friends, your name and yours, are words evoking nothing. Here I sit by the fire, and on the other side are you. That is enough, and nothing else is true. The moving world, and the friends that lived in it, they are all shadows. You alone remain. real and embodied in this drowsing room, with music scattering in bright golden rain, and candles staring into the gloom. End a poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Private Property by Aldous Huxley. All fly, yet who is misanthrope? The actual men and things that pass, jostling, to wither as the grass so soon, and, be it heaven's hope, or poetry's kaleidoscope, or love, or wine, at feast, at mass, each has a paradise of glass, where never a yearning heliotrope pursues the sun's ascent or slope. For the sun dreams there, and no time is or was. Like fawns embossed in our domain, we look abroad, and our calm eyes mark how the goatish gods of pain revel, and if, by grim surprise, they break into our paradise, patient, we build its beauty up again. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Social Amenities by Aldous Huxley. I am getting on well with this anecdote, when suddenly I recall the many times I have told it of old, and all the worked-up phrases, and the dying fall of voice, well timed in the crisis, the note of mock heroic ingeniously struck. The whole thing sticks in my throat, and my face all tingles and pricks with shame for myself and my hearers. These are the social pleasures, my God! But I finish the story triumphantly, all the same. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Life Theoretic by Aldous Huxley. While I have been fumbling over books, and thinking about God and the devil and all, other young men have been battling with the days, and others have been kissing the beautiful women. They have brazen faces like battering rams. But I, who think about books and such, I crumble to impotent dust before the struggling, and the women palsy me with fear. But when it comes to fumbling over books, and thinking about God and the devil and all, why, there I am. But perhaps, after all, the battering rams are right. God knows. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Siesta Thoughts by Aldous Huxley. Oh, these distressing heavy lunches! They tend to ecstasy, ecstasy reversed when from soul the body stands triumphantly apart. Oh, afternoons, afternoons! Snug rectories, where no foot crunches the sleek gravel except the pad-paws of baboons, black and hairy curates dressed in ecclesiastical frock-coats and dog-collars. Oh, afternoons, afternoons! I must take to eating bread and jam again. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Farewell to the Muses by Aldous Huxley. My typewriter has been writing crookedly for a very considerable time. It is so hard to write in metre and in rhyme with a typewriter that writes crookedly. Lines should look clean and decent to the eye, and mine have ceased to do so. And so, that is why I am ceasing to be a poet, because my typewriter writes so exacerbatingly, so distressingly crookedly. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Retrospect by Aldous Huxley. Looking from the midway crest of my course back to where, at 22, I act my present tour de force of tragi-comedy, what view will my ripe and fate-endoctrined wisdom take of all the odd grimaces that now I make? Shall I see, memorially, Leicester Square, peopled with many blanks and one clear figure, combining comically the air of a tipsily priapic first grave-digger, with a hatred and remote disdain expressed by the Prince of Denmark's smile for a world too sunk in its own flesh, too vile to feel or understand the pain of doubting whether anything's worth while? And shall I see the full ingenuousness of my dropped jaw and still incredulous eyes, when, wondering at the mildness of my surprise, I murmured, "What? Only this? No more than this?" At my first schoolboy's caning, my first kiss, my first true passion perfect made, consummate now in flesh. What? Nothing more? Is it only this? I thought, and was afraid something was left undone, and swore the poets lied, little suspecting then that only this would grow my everything, grow to an all-devouring love, which mist should prove incomparable pain. Shall I resist, snug 40 then, the pleasure of bantering, drolling a little with the present me about those fears and jealousies and doubts, those rages and aguish trembling bouts of overmastering desire when she was absent? Oh, how long will it last? Oh yes, decidedly, having a sense of humour and a past. One will amuse oneself decidedly. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Valedictory by Aldous Huxley. I had remarked how sharply one observes when life is disappearing round the curves of yet another corner, a chapter done, ended in blank with not a hope in sight of a new scroll beyond the colophon. I had remarked, when it was good luck and good night and a good journey to you, on her face certain enigmas penned in the hieroglyphs of that half-frown and queer-fixed smile, and the trace of clouded thought in those brown eyes, always so happily clear of hows and ifs. My poor bleared mind, and haunting wise. There I stood, holding her farewell hand. Oh, I was pressing my life and all my being to that good-bye, pressing them small and smaller till, hey presto, there I'd stand, dead, when they vanished with the sight of her. And I saw that she had grown aware, queer puzzled face, of other things beyond the present and her own young speed, of yesterday and what new days might breed monstrously when the future brings a charger with your late lamented head, aware of other people's lives and will, aware, perhaps, aware even of me. I seemed to see a joyous hope of it, but still I pitied her, for it was sad to see a goddess shorn of her divinity. In the midst of her speed she had made pause, and doubts, with all their threat of claws, outstripped till now by her unconsciousness, had seized on her. She was proved mortal now. But you should only live. You were meant never to know a thought's distress, but a long glad astonishment of the world's beauty and your own. I pity you, dear goddess, grown perplexed and mortal. But can it truly be that she is aware, perhaps, aware even of me? And life recedes, recedes. The curve is bare, my handkerchief flutters blankly in the air, and the question rumbles in the void. Was she aware? Was she, after all, aware? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Tahiti by Sacheverell Sitwell. When the hood of night comes on the land, my ship is rocked by the sunset wind. Shrill voices from the town cleave the air like darts. When they sing in chorus, it were as if steel arrows of the day, the showers of rain, rebounded to the dome of air. When one alone shouts loud, his jagged voice blares like a trumpet. Banjos and drums beat, twang, and throb hysterically outside the mud-built huts. Far off, the sun, caught spider-like in its cloud web, is seething down the sea and churns the waves, spatters them with blood. Despairingly it waves red tentacles, clutching fiercely each wool-white wave-crest, then splutters out. Ashore, the tall trees flap their foliage, cut out like stage trees carved in canvas. The leaves whip the trees, as ropes flick the masts of every salt-fed ship. Then the hood of night comes lower, and from the shore the Babel grows. I dream that I, too, sing. Lanterns are lit, great stairs of light shake in the water. All dank and wet, I seem to climb, swaying on soundless gold. Go silently above the land, unto the distant moon, alone, and ringing clear as a bell. It is a gong beaten by the drunkard clouds which reel on the horizon, and by the echoing laughter of the stars. Even the sound dies now, and the white bubble, drop of milk, seems to feed and love whole worlds, turning gold to silver, all ugliness to beauty. End of poem. This recording is in a public domain. Barrel Organs by Sacheverell Sitwell. 1. Prologue. River-like, this cold quick wind swirls and eddies down the street. In the wide level of the sounding sea, sudden pitfalls gape, deep-laid traps for ships, great seething hollows, mirrors for the sky, blue deep chasms flecked with red and gold, blown with foam, and live with salt-stiffed sails and sailors' bodies, golden treasures and forsaken ships. And in these hungry, seething deeps there lies the fleeting wild reflection of the skies. So in the steady flow of wind that swirls and eddies down the street, all sense and sight, all sound and sorrow revolve around us here, fly straight as arrows to this spot, and fall around us. The jagged stones are live with sound, and one can hear the shuffling feet on them tread low, monotonous, inevitable, vast armies marching down the corridors of time. Oh, how this music throbs and lifts our bodies from the street! Squat chimneys rattle and revolve, and you can hear the weathercocks fly helter-skelter, tall drink shops with bedizened fronts decked out with golden letters. Inside them voices raised in quarrel seem in an instant to jump nearer for the swing doors with frosted glass and bars so thick they seem to guard a treasure, not screen drab ugly drink, fly open with a squirt of yellow light, which only shows with emphasis the dust and crumbling paper in the gutter, a lovesick ballad with a chorus, the snarl and tin-tongued tremolo of tenors with mellow, even-toned basses, make the blind and beer-daft beggars stamp their feet and swing their arms in unison, so they forget the cold and hungry vigil for a halfpence. The doors swing to, and there is no more light. The darkness throbs around one like the pulse within a frightened animal. On either side stretch archways, deep like sleep and hopeless as the sea, a drunkard shuffling his slipshod feet towards his dreary starving home, sings in an even yellow voice, sings of pleasures he has never tasted, but sings with full conviction, The shop signs creak and rattle in the wind, and from far off a clock strikes, half-heartedly. The passage of the hours is uniform. They glide together like the tapping of a drum. Our lives are but as sand within the hourglass. One half is up, the other down. So, like the ever-shifting sea, devouring misery eats up all the inroads of prosperity, just as the fangs of seething foam, which race and slide o'er the tawny sand, are quick withdrawn by the immutable tides. The moon, young light-haired shepherd, has but to lead away his star-fed flocks, the wool-white foaming breakers of the sea, then pasture them again. And when he rests behind those time-clad hills, the clouds, to see the homing stars, striped honey-bees, and shuns the sun-god's ravenous embrace, without a sight of him, the dragon writhing foam to the gentle piping of his wind-stopped flute, draws back again. Our lives are short, and do we differ but by our degrees of misery. We have a solace. Listen then. 2. Song, the Feathered Hat. Oh, how this music throbs and lifts our feet! That day the sky was molten gold, the wide, fresh-smelling earth was dancing beneath the glittering sun-shafts. One side, the street was dark, as deep and cool as water-wells. The other was ablaze with light. Great bars, feet thick, shot down between the sun's hot eyelashes. Motors, with their rush and whir, shot into heated glamour, then came black and dull, alternately, between these blazing shafts of heat. The organ plays a slow and measured waltz. I had my best hat with the feathers on it. My boots were thick with dust. I held up my skirt and swayed. Could not dance, the heat was such. I moved so slow, grew tired and more tired. Could think of nothing. Then of a sudden came the syncopation. It seemed to clutch my heart. My nerves came strung like banjo strings. I seemed to twang them with my hands and toes. My heavy boots throbbed like catapults a-shooting. Reverberate thud of thunder-drops, shafts and chasms of blinding light, cavalry gallop of falling leaves, crackle and spark of shooting stars. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Nightingale by Sacheverell Sitwell. The white nightingale is hidden in the branches and heavy leafage of the clouds. She pours down her song, cascades threaded like pearls, and the winds, her many-noted flutes, flood forth their harmony. But the earth turns away, swinging in its air and water-rocked cradle. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Soliloquy and Speech from the Mayor of Murcia by Sacheverell Sitwell. 1. Soliloquy. The shifting sand lies flat and high as the stand from which an orator sees each human head, a petalled flower turning towards the sun its benefactor. All this I must destroy, beating to a metal disk each feeling flower, to carve it to the leer of cunning, clutch of greed, or smile of sacrifice. I stand here now. This crowd, it seems my duty to command, is still afar off. Yet the sea is here for me to practise on, each wave a hoary head nigh tumbling from its long bent body. Each head with white hair blown by my mouthpiece, the lean hard-fingered wind, grown old because its thirsty hands can never span a shape whose bulk will stop and give it nourishment. So the insensate sea strives on, and when the far wine-stained breath of the sun, panting after his horses, cools the beard and stops the sea-god's conch, then in fury all the mermen thrash their tails and beat their fins together. always clamour, rattling of pebbles, strife, and the greedy gaping of the quicksands. Now as the shadow of a frown on the face of God is shown by the darkening of a waving cornfield, so, as night damps the gilt glory of the sun, as he stoops like a husbandman to till the earth, mighty sweat pouring from under his gorgeous turban of cloud, the whole great earth heaves a sigh, and all the blossoms of the foam draw in their heads, all the harvest of the untilled sea folds itself to sleep. Then from far off the town raises its domes and spires. They seem a troop of elephants with glittering eyes of glass and swaying castles on their backs. The whole town sways towards me, pouring out its people who gather in the streets. March on. Hubbub throb of drums, clangour and thrash of bells, and the measured march and stamp of feet, a crash of movement on 4 short notes, gestures of a marionette for either arm and both his legs, and trumpet calls forked and quick as lightning, the crowd all gay with colour blown along the road like confetti when a wedding's over, bars of colour, streaks of colour, and sharp notes like a rapier's thrust, and the fevered clanging of the bells rings out still more and more, cataracts, curved blades of steel falling down, down, through ice-cold caverns. The clash of shields when ship meets ship, and the fighters leap from boat to boat, the sea tossing her blue shoulders, and the spray running salt unaccustomed tears down each eager face. The whole wide earth trembles and totters with the stamp of myriad feet, the fret and fury of a mighty army following the foe through a level land. Swift as eagles the Saracen horse fled my army through the sun-scorched sand. The furious trampling of horses stirred the desert, making the sand ring like a trumpet, echoing the hoots, the howls, the heavy stamp of hooves, raising hurricanes of dust to hide the stars. Wind-riven curtains of sand to hide those whirling dancers from our sight. My mind now hovers like a vulture, seeing downstretched before him dim valleys filled with memories, high peaks enreddened by the sunset fires, and gloomy depths clothed black beneath the coverlet of sleep, forgetfulness. And now I hover like this vulture swimming against the star-strewn spaces of the wind, or like a rock stand undismayed the peals, the clattering throbs and splash of foam from all this sea of upturned heads and bodies, all poignant with colour, great waves of sun-touched skies, as brilliant, swift and shrill as when the sun, with gorgeous fingers, plucks the watery thrill of music from the star-high lyre that echoes from the clouds to touch the earth, all resonant with rippling carillons of rain. And now I have to speak, explain the objects we're assembled for. 2. The Speech. Citizens of Murcia, slaves to these, by my command you're gathered here. I see on every forehead lines of care, each body's bowed and worn with toil. For many years you've laboured, tilled and reaped your harvests, golden corn and vine clusters, ripened with the sun's red blood, and when the burning hours are dead, refreshed with crystal emanation, dew from the hidden stores of water in the earth's black gaping chasms. So in the steady pageantry of years you've garnered treasures, wealth to deck and glorify our town. One part of this, our solemn duty, you've already done. Great girdling walls which circle round the town keep off our foes. A casque of steel upon a warrior's head keeps off all blows as lustily as these star-aspiring towers. And in the evening the droning bells which call to prayer re-echo from the walls and peal aloft among the towers, as in the forest on a summer's evening the tall trees are rudely stirred by rush of winged insects, intent upon their honeyed business. Our walls, then, rise triumphant, and we can turn our energies to other fields. The plain here stretches many a mile between the town and tawny mountains. The far hills seem battlements of austere hostile towns, and nearer the clouds hang low like beauty-drugged butterflies above the flowering fields. Let us girdle the earth with our handiwork, bind the blue hills with our strength. The firmament shall know our might and skill. Broad roads shall cross the plains, cleave the gold harvest at their will, and clamp the hills down with their might. From the high towers of Murcia the roads shall seem like fluttering pennons tied to lances pointing at the stars. And we will dig canals to bring the sea-salt breath into the land, and heap her shimmering treasures on quays deep laden with the glittering corn sheaves. So then, with holds replenished, our galleons shall sail the seas to distant towns afloat above the tawny sands, like fleets at anchor. And when it's evening, no sound shall mar the cool canals, but they shall stretch like weighty dragnets, and in each mesh you'll see the moon, all silver like a draggled scale, left shimmering amid the drying nets. Now the thin air was torn with cheers, and the fiery fountains of the mayor's speech had set afire the gaping listeners. The swirling smoke of words had blinded every citizen to sober hard reality. Great thoughts, those striding bridges athwart the crystal chasms of our dreams, seemed like accomplished facts, and on the prancing horses of ambition each conscience leaps the river that runs between the thought and fact accomplished. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Trumpets by Sacheverell Sitwell. Woven from the tangled hair of comets on the never-ceasing shuttles of the wind, night, thick tabernacle for the sun, is pitched, and from the deepening gloom ring out the trumpets, red and quick as sparks, before the vivifying campfire of the gods. The blare of a trumpet is brazen, fierce as the culminate charge that decides a battle. Great plumes, like clouds wind-riven, float behind each fighter, and their armour glints and gleams in the sun. The horses' hooves beat loud, insistent, as ominous and dire as kettle-drums. The whole earth's expectant, and the fields stretch green metallic as the leaden-plated sky. Far off, small windows, kissed by the sun's red lips, send back a shuddering echo to the blare of trumpets. The cottage smoke, so stiff and regular, goes creaking through the painted air, and everything is waiting, watching in uncertainty. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Dream by Arnold James. I wander forth along the riverside, while down the stream 1,000 barges glide in the wan amber sun of autumn-tide. I only tread the path, all else beside, between the margins of the river wide, before the current glide. And I too sometimes in my wandering seem to ride like any other on the stream, beneath the pale sun's last forlornest beam. I cannot say if this should be but dream, or am I shepherd, while all these my team float on the stream. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Till the Morn Break by Arnold James. He tried to make a softer song, and lighter than the springs. He tried to dance with feet that should be nimbler than the wings of the blackbirds in the garden, of the swallows o'er the pool, of the mayfly living daily to a sudden grave and cool. He sat beside the willows when the afternoon was over, amid the drooping meadows sweet and willow herb and clover. But how could he be making songs and dances when the moon descended to the meadow's bosom, dancing to no tune? And how could he be making dance and music when the sky was like a purple ocean where the wind was never high, but blowing gently, gently, and the shuddering stars were dim behind the silent moon haze with the moon upon its rim? Oh, how would he be singing when he had no call to sing? And how would he be dancing when he heard no music ring? I bade him wrap his body warm and drop his tired head, and let the morrow morning shine upon an empty bed. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
In Nassau by Iris Tree. 1. All down the somnolent street where pale-tinged houses dream the niggers go, black faces crowding together, and between the palm leaves dancing with lethargic gestures, the bright long water spreads, green as a parrot's wing. We have rest here, and a monotony of wheels, a peaceful noise like bees that moan in June. And the sun rusts not, but his brazen heraldries, tarnished with evening, are burnished with the dawn. But pain comes, stabbing in the night with silver knife through the window, a blanched moon, full of fear and the burden of desire, and nothing rids us utterly of grief, we who have pilgrim souls that will not sleep. 2. Moonlight planting the world with lilies, so hushed it seems and scented, but in the chapel is a droning where the niggers chant their hymns, and we in aureoled loneliness go down the street contented, with hearts that beat for pleasure to the rhythm of our limbs. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Black Velvet by Iris Tree. The darkness of the trees at deep midnight, and sombreness of shadows in the lake, a mountain in the starlight wide awake, dreaming to heaven with imperial might of lifted shoulders, huge against the bright, bespattered jewelry of stars. The ache of silence, and the sobbing tides that break from music. Slumbering cities, candlelight snuffed in the flooding darkness, and the train of queens that go to scaffold for a sin. Or splash of blackness manifest of pain, Hamlet among his court, a harlequin of tragedies. Mysterious. And again, Venetian masks against a milky skin. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Myself in the City by Iris Tree. Winding down the street in wearied gait, the barrel organ dribbles out its song merged with the thud of feet, forever dallying, indifferent and indefinite, along. The houses stood like rows of cripples, some paralyzed, some hunchbacked, and some bent with age. They seemed at war, their chimneys threatening, their brows hung heavy in a sombre rage. Crab-like the children crawled, while always hammering above their heads the scolding, shrewish tongue. They grew, as bloodless flowers unflourishing, waxen and pale from out the dust and dung. And one could see the strip of sunset fluttering, even as washed-out rags upon the line. And one could hear the sparrows twittering, and the hours ticking in a slow decline. Then, beaded on the hem of evening, the coloured lights were threaded here and there, till, proud with sweets and plumes and oranges, the shops grew brilliant in the tinsel glare. Grey was the deathbed of the twilight, shuddering the faint hands of the day stretched to the night, fending it off, or feebly wavering over the pallid glints of stolen light. And grey the faces that were gathering among the fallen ashes of the day, and red the faces, yellow, flickering under the lamps upon the long highway. And some were gashed with smiles, and quaint grimaces of hate, and pain, and hunger, and despair. And some wore coloured hats and meek frivolities, limp ribbons and false pansies in their hair, and all were cold, and all seemed passionless. There shone no zest or splendour in their lives, nor hope in anything but holidays, or watching funerals, or taking wives. I dared not think, for truth rose horrible, slapping the face with coarse, uncaring hand, but like them cheated into merriment, I wilfully refused to understand. Turned me away from one-eyed poverty, trod pity underfoot, oh, danced on grief, bade the crowd sing and fill my desolation, bade them be glad and hide my disbelief, whirl me down the tide where there's no tarrying, sweep me in the long river of the road. They do not fear the end of vanity, they look to heaven for their last abode. They do not care but live their miseries, as I, for there is nothing else to do. And so I passed on, tired and visionless, and shook the dust prophetic from my shoe. Strange we so love the world, for presently, out of my window looking on the city, I blessed the night, and the roofs slumbering all huddled, and I felt nor shame nor pity that all the ships of life are harbourless, and all the winds unkind, and all the waves bent to obliteration for eternity, and all their billows little hollow graves, but only breathed the air, intensified by the ascending breath of million lungs, and heard the labouring metropolis, quickened by whisper of a million tongues, and felt a king of splendid loneliness, and felt an atom of the peopled spaces, and felt again my lordly egoism, one face distinct among the blur of faces. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Imposture by Iris Tree. The adored, wild, strange, irresistible, how they fail one at the last. What is there in your faces that we should worship with our souls? Most lovable, perfidious, vague, molesting even in our visions with treacherous pathos. O vulgarity, mediocrity, stupidity, what is it in you that makes us lavish our love, covering your meagre bodies with our passionate mantle, dyed with blood and dreams? Life and its grey days, and time are a thin curtain through which you shadow, or a dim glass through which you peer. You climb in at the windows of our souls with ladders and stratagems. You mope in corners with reproachful eyes, but what do you do for us lute players, dancers, deceivers, other than lie with red lips and cajole with tears of beryl? People, men and women with laughable tragic faces, winking at love, treading our songs and illusions under petulant feet. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. As a Nun's Face by Iris Tree. As a nun's face from her black draperies, so full of mystery the moon looks down. She dreams of a passion that shall outlive time, of beauty's face beheld unveiled and close, of God who blows the worlds like bubbles up, smiling alway to watch them swell and die. She dreams of music played among the stars when the slow tongues of silence are unloosed. Above the city and its faltering candles, above the jostling head of man, she moves, strange as a dreamer, walking in her sleep. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Optimism by Iris Tree. What will happen to the beggar, and the sinner, and the sad, and the drunk that drinks for sorrow, and the maimed and mad? What will happen to the starving, and the rebel run from drilling, cowardly, afraid of fighting, and the child who stole a shilling? They shall go to prison black, with a striped shirt on the back, feast on bread and water there, in a cell, without a care. They shall learn at least their duty, never tempted more of beauty. They shall walk in rows and praise the Lord, and 1 or 2 shall hang upon a cord, and 2 or 3 shall die of grief alone, and this is well, for sinners should atone. And 5 or 6 shall curse the God that made them, and this is wicked, for the priests forbade them. And those that grew from dust shall go to dust downtrodden. Saith the preacher, God is just. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Question by Iris Tree. And afterwards, when honour has made good, and all you think you fight for shall take place, a late rejoicing to a crippled race, the bulldog's teeth relax and snap for food, the eagles fly to their forsaken brood within the ravaged nest. When no disgrace shall spread a blush across the haggard face of anxious pride, already flushed with blood. In victory will you have conquered hate and stuck old folly with a bayonet and battered down the hideous prison gate? Or will the fatted gods be gloried yet, glutted with gold and dust and empty state, the incense of our anguish and our sweat. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Ballad by Iris Tree. Many things I'd find to charm you, books and scarves and silken socks, all the 7 rainbow colours, black and white with broidered clocks. Then a stick of polished whalebone, and a coat of tawny fur, and a row of gleaming bottles filled with rosewater and myrrh. Rarest brandy of the 50s, old liqueurs in leather kegs, golden sauterne, copper sherry, and a nest of plover's eggs. Toys of tortoise shell and jasper, little boxes cut in jade, handkerchiefs of finest cambric, damask cloths, and dim brocade. 6 musicians of the Magyar, madness-making harmony, and a bed austere and narrow with a quilt from Barbary. You shall have a bath of amber, a Venetian looking-glass, and a crimson-chested parrot on a lawn of terraced grass. Then a small Tanagra statue found anew in ruins old, or an azure plate from Persia, or my hair in plaits of gold, or my scalp that like an Indian you shall carry for a purse, or my spilt blood in a goblet, or a volume of my verse. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Soldiers by Sherard Vines. At first with fruit and flowers and drink they went, libated, festal day when demigods in columns swing amid the maniac mob. I saw massed women singing at the quay songs of their land ere the high ship crept hooting out to sea. And then how one would crowd to watch a squad catching the snap and unity of drill, at practice days afield, invading hidden villages in laps of downs. They, still unwhipped, plod on obediently to death without the cheering and the praise, hysteric meed of yesterday. A soldier's such a common thing. Besides, 2 years of war have taught the people it's the soldier's job to stop a bullet. Why then spoil with praise for what must needs be done? Rather suggest their aim and place. Go and get killed, perhaps, but go. Now, when the last wheels of the scourge are whole upon us, when, once more, industrial England clanks her wheels and pistons, and the splendid course of strikes, lockouts, trade bickerings, shows superb pageant to the world, the soldiers will not be. Erased amid the thoughts of busy men, the barrack walls will hide them. Even these monuments for the great dead, hurrying clerks and labourers, with only eyes for clocks, will pass. Perhaps, as in that troubled peace, our citizens will stone such men as kept their women from crude rape, from all deaths and indecencies their children, and their goods from flame. At least forgetfulness and ban from gratitude is theirs. Who wants to fuss about a common clod, a stupid sensual soldier? Who, were again the sign of blood hoisted in heaven, as gladly would offer the casket of his soul to tearing steel as now? Why, all he's fit for is wenching and bars, a caricature for music hall and comic papers. 1 or 2 will not forget. They went with him in rain and shadow, knew his guile, his vice and pluck, who daily met him verminous, him ware, him gruff, watching how first dawn stood against the trenches of his enemy, who stayed with him where dangers crashed and whimpered, who beheld his eyes still angry, glaze, and all his face, where not blood brown, turned to the grey of useless clinker, raked and cooled, whose agony was his. They learnt the soldier is a thorn of flesh, grown hard by sweat and discipline. No saint, we do not want them there. No Cuchulain, whose hero light Enarioles him, but a doer man, brother to hunger, cold and fear, content to dirty work, content to dirty death among the rats, if that is in his day's schedule. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Gospel of Chimneys by Sherard Vines. How far the stour and reek of them who lift their up all day beyond the woods, beyond the hills, this signal, come and pray. Come and do worship at this church, all that have brain or thew. Wide our unlovely precincts are to hold the like of you. In running belt and biting cog shall your salvation lie, of furnace strength and skill at lathe spring your doxology. The desk is mightier than the field, the pen most strong to save, since who will dare to bondage there? He will not fear the grave. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Bull by Sherard Vines. Now day, like a great white bull, shambles among the dewy corn, massive limbed, and broad, and full, 2 curves of the sun for horn, winged bull Assyrian, twain blue wings that heaven span. Woody plains and rivers slow, that with reeded whisper go down the nave of green willow, through the poplar's portico, there the bull of day must pass, parting osiers, rustling grass. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Low Tide by Sherard Vines. The brown sand stretches away with shadows of purple and crimson, bed to rest foam frail limbs on, when sea babes tire in their play. That sea the moon piles high, far out where low waves clamber, ivory, jade, and amber, tumbling enormously. They spit at one another, they howl like strange pied leopards, whom she serenely shepherds, their mistress and their mother. Cruelly out of the east, to cut his pitted runes on the dry sands of the dunes, and scatter the yellow yeast from the slavering firth's grey lips, the mad wind griffin runs to try conclusions with the black-hulled covey of ships, wallowing out with coal from ports that are hard and bitter as an ergostool fitter to wear down body and soul. But here the bay full of sand, with a brooding promontory to guard its golden glory, obeys the time's command, follows the hissing storm in sinuous little runnels, spins in cone-shaped funnels like a spirit taking form. Under the massive sky, sword white wings are wheeling, terrible things revealing when they flash up and cry, things for a second out, which scatter as quick and mingle with the rasping of the shingle, the wind's hilarious rout, written in sand almost, but hastily trampled over, where his swift feet cover the grass-bound arc of the coast. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Carcery by Sherard Vines. The house was full of thick green light. I could not see the roof, but bold on either side, obese black pillars ranged uneven, stood for silent cruelty and lust and pride. The whole place seemed sardonic. Far and wide I searched, but saw no man and heard no man. I cast no shadow, made no patter as I ran. A door slammed down some gallery. The noise, as though a crowd repeated, voice to voice, giggling a bestial story. For a space the echoes danced, but died, and in their place the regular dull scream behind closed doors of one whose careful torture pleased the inquisitors. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Pack by Sherard Vines. They fight upon the barrier, as flies do buzz and beat upon a pane, seeking any way out. They crawl upon each other like maggots, urged by one unslaked desire to eat. With little loosing they burst through, at music chanced upon unknowingly, of that potent and curious quality to spring a lock. Words in chance order put do the mechanic duty of a spell. A ray of colour will break up a flaw in the veil's fabric. Then see them pouring through, jostling, inhuman, blind to all but need, burnt with appalling hunger, of no mind with all our gentleness and chastity, who have not yet been starving in thin hell. These are the crooked ones, the curved moons that in a man's body make him lunatic. They are maimed to look upon, and featureless, grey or faint blue, and whirling as they go, more like pale cone-shaped toadstools in a wood, which smell of dead man's flesh, than animal and living things. Whither they move they bring coldness and terror over everyone. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Carry On by Sherard Vines. Carry on! Lash the gold flag of high holiday sound to the masthead, and laugh at the throb and the sting of the wound. We are that island folk, glorious makers of war, frivolous, wasteful, the jesters at death. Others are shocked or disgusted. God grant us the strength to maintain race meetings up to good pitch, for the crowd cheering mad in the rain, velvet-skinned horses with legs like a ripple of mirth, whither our money is tossed from the ends of the earth. Keep stubborn play in our prize ring, white muscle, and strong leads from a leopard-quick bruiser, sponge, towel and gong. Hounds in the kennel, dog otter and fox in the field. Give us a punt on the river, a tramp on the weald. Open the floodgates, and let our humanity out. Trainloads that eat and fling bottles and jostle and shout, roll with each other in orgiast love on the sand, dance on the pier to the patriot bray of a band, yell on the gaudy nagged roundabouts, snarling with mouths of the organ, shy coconuts, gape at the raucous untruths a cheapjack hands out with his watches, toy weighing machines painted red, or a shock from brass handles to tingle their skins, name stamps, fags, vestas, and sweets for a penny and slot, changing hat parties portrayed at a tanner the lot. Places to scribble our names on, seats, lampposts, and walls, keep us agog for the grin of review in our halls, girls to kick lustily high for the men in the stalls, lilt, the contagious refrains we can whistle or sing, smart business and patter to set the show off with a swing. Give us our cinema show with its squeezing and fun in the dark, S&A toddling buffoon, or the tale of a saint and a shark, and a heroine rescued. Then leave us an hour or two to get drunk in when all the work's over and nothing to do. Then, for the swagger on Sunday, to rattle down street, our bicycle snorting blue smoke, and a girl on the carrier seat, sparkle of glass and white linen in restaurant doors, beautiful things calling out from shop windows and stores, laughter and noise on the pavements, the paper we snatch from a boy in our haste to good dinner, the flowers in the park like a patch of blithe tapestry, haze of a cigarette, flame of a match. To hell with the bomb or the bullet that brings you to dust. Let us know joy while we can, and sorrow as soon as we must. Live every man of us, drink of the froth and the fun, bring the torch down the last lap. Carry on, carry on. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
From the Balcony by Edith Sitwell to Helen. Lagoons. The night, a blue wave flashed from tropic seas, fills with a hollow sound that gored the sun. Drifted along its waters, ripples run across the cities stilled with ecstasies. And floating in those waters far away are sirens beautiful as swans adrift. Deep mirrored multitudes, the heavens sift upon them watery atoms from the day, till domes and towers like fiery suns are drowned in subtle ripples of a sense like sound, striking the burning cities like a lyre, and every wanderer seems a shaft of fire. From the Balcony. Like thirsty winds, the cities dance and swoon amid the wine-stained mists of Carnival, where flower-fumed beams of the young lotus moon float. Towers like leaping gold flames fire the skies. Faint sounds and perfumes, languorous flower sighs, dance in the evening air, in eddies fall. The negress night devours that gourd, the sun, grown overripe, and lets the gold juice run, staining her body, pelts with the hot rind the gold processions as they dance and sway. Then, with a noise like fire, the phoenix wind of night springs upward, blows the towers this way. Multitudes. Beneath the midnight skies, grown copper cold, on Titan's stairways, like the world's great cause, unmeaning endlessness, processions pause in Babel labyrinths where huge cascades of diamond fall between vast colonnades and diaper the floors with moons of gold. Then, floating onward, blown by winds of chance, they fade away like dust of earth, a dance. Strange sparks struck out by time, the diamond dust of fountain-lighted groves, the golden must of vats of joy, and lights like maddened seas, drown the bull-throated bellowing of these with fading sounds, unfolding like a rose, until the mists of joys and laughters toss the moon like some too careless rose let fall from the blown hair of night, the bacchanal. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. A Histrion. From Women in Wartime by Edith Sitwell. When death's hand wiped out my son, I lay and watched with open eyelids, while great waves of numbness rose and hid the universe from sight. I did not care, for when the eyes are blinded, little recks it if the world goes reeling in the dust through darkness or through light. In the night time, oh, the scream that tears my body into tatters, beats my brain to pulp. But yet I cannot breathe it into air, dead my lips, and anguish like a wind has set my body running. But my soul is broken, cannot crawl to hide, I know not where. Now I go dancing, dancing, to the crowd, as to a mirror I posture, and I practice smiles that crack my face apart. And I paint my cheeks blood red, but when night falls, to my reflection, I lay bare this empty hole that once had been a living heart. Posture once more at my mirror, watch with interest my face alter, from the cracking smile, the mirth that wrapped my body like a shroud. Yes, I watch the dreadful tears that bleed and sizzle from my eyelids, and God knows if I'm acting to myself or to the crowd. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Two Orchard Poems by Edith Sitwell. To Osbert. 1. The Satyr in the Periwig. The satyr Scarabombadon pulled periwig and breeches on. Grown old and stiff, this modern dress adds monstrously to my distress. The gout within a hoof and heel is very hard to bear. I feel, when crushed into a buckled shoe, the twinge will be redoubled, too. And when I walk in gardens green, and weeping think on what has been, then wipe one eye, the other sees the plums and cherries on the trees. Small bird-quick women pass me by, with sleeves that flutter airily, and baskets glowing like a fire, with laughing fruits of my desire. Plums sunburnt as the King of Spain, or gold-cheeked as a Nubian, with strawberries all goldy freckled, pears fat as thrushes, and as speckled. Pursue them, yes, and squeeze a tear. Please spare poor satyr one, my dear. Be off, sir, go and steal your own. Alas, poor Scarabombadon, they'd rend his ruffles, stretch a twig, tear off a satyr's periwig. 2. The Muslin Gown. With spectacles that flash, striped fool's cap hung with gold, and silver bells that clash, bright rhetoric and cold. In owl-dark garments goes the rain, dull pedagogue again. And in my orchard wood small songbirds flock and fly, like cherubs brown and good. When through the trees go I, knee-deep within the dark-leaf sorrel, cherries red as bells of coral ring to see me come. I with my fruit-dark hair, as dark as any plum, my summer gown as white as air, and frilled as any quick bird there. But oh, what shall I do? Old Owl Wing's back from town. He's skipping through my trees. I know he hates my summer gown. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Scene from Saul, an Unfinished Play by Edith Sitwell. Characters: Narrator, Saul, Atira, mother of Saul and Tiras. Chorus:
They've blinded me.
Queen, old age clear and terrible as noon, thy face has gathered darkness from the heavens.
Pull down the heavens, seal mine eyes with night. Oh, emptiness falls endlessly, they rock, come down. I had 2 eyes, and she has blinded them. 2 breasts to feed the world, she hacked them off. These were my sons, twin-born, my roots of life. And she has torn my roots, I drift through space.
I would mine eyes were deeper than the sea, that I might weep,
but God hath sealed my springs.
Enter Saul.
Cry, tear the fabric of the world with screams. This whirlpool of my madness has sucked down the palaces of light into its depths. The pulsing earth is ashen black as night. They say it is with drought. O thirsty ape, there is no thirst save in my empty veins. She came, a snake, and stabbed my veins with love. She changed me to a knife. I killed my brother.
You should have stabbed my womb, Saul, my son Saul.
A cry went up. The weft of the world was riven. Then silence filled my veins. instead of blood.
My tongue is changed to dust. I fain would weep, only mine eyelids withered when time died.
God built a tower that reached to heaven's brink, but he hath blown on me. I fall, I fall.
The gods are drunken with my lamentation, and night invades my veins, and flows within my body clothed with trembling, and my face that hath grown blind and featureless as heaven. O thou art veiled with tears, like some sad river. The earth is broken down, is broken down. The heavens die, they melt away like time. I would the day grew blind before her birth. The light a curse to break the world's old womb, and mix her shape with dust before she lived, to melt my son's blood to a smoke that died within the raging flame of their desire. I would the chasms of the day and night were cumbered with the ruins of the heaven, and light a rushing thunder, branding us with blackness, sealing all the springs of life, that time were but a dew that fades away, and life a veil the hate of God has riven. And this dull house of clay wherein I dwell were broken like the earth, were spilt like rain.
Crush down the beat of time, O mighty God, the pulse of youth, the veins of love and hate, so I may hear the crying of his soul. Cry, weep, for there is none to hear you now. With those lips red as hell, you burn the world. The light is dead, for with your long black hair that twists and writhes like hell's long hissing river, you quenched the light. Oh, you are very pale. White with the dust of eons is your face, things ground to powder by the mills of lust. And I will sift your dust like whitened ash from craters of my hate. You looked at me, my bones were water, and the world lay dead. Oh, oh, the vast walls of the world gyrate. Close in, they'll crush my heart, they'll crush my heart.
Pull down the heavens like a sackcloth pall, to spread upon our faces, sealed with night. Pull down the sun and burn the fiery moon. The fabric of the air is torn apart. The world is dead. There is no world at all. The light is dead. There shall be no more light. Pull down the heavens like a sackcloth pall. Crush down the beat of time. It was my heart. The light is dead. The light is dead. Is dead.
Curtain. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Messalina at Margate by Edith Sitwell. To Sacheverell. The tents are coloured like a child's balloons, they swell upon the air like August moons, anchored by waters paler than a pearl. The airs like rain-wet shrinking petals curl beneath the rainbow lights of noons that fill the open calyx with the faintest thrill, then break in airy bubbles on the sense like sounds upheld in exquisite suspense. In grand toilette, and with a parasol bright fringed as the noonday sun, that fool of beauty, Messalina, promenades, a crinoline keeps off the other shades. Her grape-black hair casts shadows deep as death, all curled and high, yet stirring at time's breath. The powder on her face is shuddering white as dust of aeons seen in heaven's light. She leaves the sands where in tents striped like fruits The dancers whirl like winds to airy flutes, and music, soother than the pulp of pearls, whose sweetness decks the swan-white siren girls, in air-pale waves like water, has the sheen of mirrors, floats like flower-winged stars. O spleen! Leave Regent's Park and quit society only to find this immorality. So now she goes to church, where bonnets steam like incense, and the painted windows seem naught but a coloured veil stupidity had wrought to clothe her dumb soliloquy. There's comfort in old age, the steam of food ascending like the rich man's soul to God, and little words that crackle as they went, how such and such a life was evil spent, until they make a fire to warm our hands. For time has wrapped the heart in swaddling bands, but yet they have not saved it from the cold. The soul's a pander too, for she has sold my body to the church. Does nicely now. Oh, soul has much to learn from flesh, I vow. Thus Messalina, grown both old and fat, the church's parrot now, and dull at that. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The County Calls by Edith Sitwell. They came upon us like a train, a rush, a scream, then gone again. With bodies like a continent encased in silken seas, they went, and came, and called, and took their tea, and patronized the deity who copies their munificence with creditable heart and sense. Each face, a plaster monument of some beloved element, whose everlasting sleep they deign to cradle in the great inane. Each tongue, a noisy clockwork bell to toll the passing hour that fell, each hat, an architect's device for building churches cheap and nice. I saw the county families advance and sit and take their teas. I saw the county gaze askance at my thin insignificance, while little thoughts, like fishes, glide beneath their eyes' pale glassy tide. They said, "Poor thing, we must be nice." They said, "We know your father," twice. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Mad Soldier by E. W. Tennant. This poem, written 3 months before the author's death in action, was not included in his Warple Flit and other poems, since it was not intended for publication. The editor, however, deems this example of his versatility too valuable to be lost. The Mad Soldier. I dropped here 3 weeks ago. Yes, I know. And it's bitter cold at night since the fight. I could tell you if I chose. No one knows, except me and 4 or 5, what ain't alive. I can see them all asleep, 3 men deep, and they're nowhere near a fire. But our wire has 'em fast as fast can be. Can't you see when the flare goes up? Shh, boys. What's that noise? Do you know what these rats eat? Body meat. After you've been down a week, and your cheek gets as pale as life, and night seems as wide as the day, only the rats and their brats seem more hungry when the day's gone away, and they look as big as bulls, and they pulls till you almost sort of shout, but the drought what you hadn't felt before makes you sore. And at times you even think of a drink. There's a leg across my thighs. If my eyes weren't too sore, I'd like to see who it be. Wonder if I'd know the bloke if I woke. Woke? By damn, I'm not asleep. There's a heap of us wondering why the hell we're not well. Leastways I am. Since I came it's the same with the others. They don't know what I do, or they wouldn't gape and grin. It's a sin to say that hell is hot, 'cause it's not. Mind you, I know very well we're in hell. In a twisted hump we lie, heaping high, yes, and higher every day. Oh, I say, this chap's heavy on my thighs. Damn his eyes. June 13th, 1916. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Kultur by Helen Rootham. We tracked Joy down upon the plain. We slew him in the light of day. 'Twas strange to see how very slow that young life ebbed away. Then through the long tormented weeks we watched the snares that we had set, for memory and that wild child of hers she named regret. At length the good snares held them fast, and helpless there the two did lie. We had forgotten how to laugh, or we had laughed to see them die. We slew all living things we found. We slew with eager, frantic haste, then sat us down and looked upon the arid, trackless waste. No bird now lived to tease our ears with sounds of love and vain content. No flower raised up a gentle head to vex us with its useless scent. The world was barren as our souls, as far around as we could see. We said, "We'll build our city here, the city of satiety." With skillful hands we raised the walls so high that neither moon nor sun could look within and see the things our weary minds would rest upon. Within the shelter of the walls we built our houses, tier on tier, the narrow streets cut sharp between like sword blades through the lifeless air. There is no movement in the streets, there's neither light nor shadow there, but motionless and blank they lie beneath the house's vacant stare. A pleasure house we built, wherein, upon an instrument of wood, a puppet player moves his hands and counterfeits the music's mood. And there we've fashioned images with cunning joints of supple steel, to feign the pleasure and applause our empty souls no longer feel. Upon the silent walls we placed great mirrors, where the endless show of puppet movements, joys, and pains in mimic mute procession go. And we who have no joys or needs, no human pleasures, griefs, or love, can see like dreams within a dream the puppets in the mirrors move. For us there is no sun nor moon, but always in a dim grey shade we sit and watch reflections of the images we made. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. I Taught 19 by Helen Rootham, 1917. Good it was to live, O Lord, good it was to be young, to feel the sap of the world spring in my veins, to feel the pulse of every happy living thing throbbing in my blood. Fair hopes and pleasant dreams were mine, joy and the pride of youth. No fears I had, nor vain regrets. I walked in liberty. Each lovely birth that consecrates the beauty of the spring, each lovely growth that spreads apace to greet the dear sun's warmth. All living things I loved, for I was young and happy too. Now I lie with my fellows, we hear the tramp o'erhead, of men in thousands marching, as once we marched, the dead. We know that they are reaping where we the dead did sow. Our spirits rise to speed them, our brothers, as they go. We hear the living overhead where we lie side by side. Dear Lord, who gave us lovely life, forget not why we died. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Symphony by Helen Rootham. La musique vivement dégouffre et choque des glaçons aux astres. Lips pressed close to warm lips, our hearts beat to the swing of the world as it rushes through space. The stars sing a loud paean of love, vast harmonies crash in a multiform tumult. Red planets awash on the tide of infinity rock to the din as the sound surges past us. New wave forms within crested wave and leaps onward. We sink for a moment as downward it sweeps, with the music of whirling of bottomless gulfs. Again upward it rushes, and dimly we hear the clash of great icebergs against a star, while color transcendent in turbulent flood hurls its spray on the white flaming shores of far suns. We are tossed and upborne on the waves that are flung by the music. The rhythm, a ladder of gold for our hearts as they mount, spans eternity, guides our wild flight through this rapture of movement and sound. As we feel its sure swaying, still closer we cling. The stars are beneath us, the harmonies swell in a mad ecstasy. O pulse of my life, press more closely to me. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Cul-de-sac by Helen Rootham. There flickers one small yellow flame, blown by a fretful breeze, that casts small shadows on the ground to dance between the trees. As some uncared for, dusty shell still covers, hidden deep, the murmur that a child once heard, so the sad houses sleep, while hid within their leprous walls that strike the heart with fear, move echoes of forgotten joy, none but the homeless hear. Gaunt figures haunt the narrow street and stoop to seek within for what the day's poor comfort may have dropped into a bin. Beneath the night's dark covering, these phantoms come and go, more frail, unreal, and mournful than the shadows that they throw. Like broken windows of a room where one is lying dead, their eyes gaze out upon the streets the weary feet must tread. For them the days are throbbing wounds, hard livid wheels of light the sun has raised upon the gloom of their eternal night. The city but a cavern man has tunneled into space, from whose high roof the mocking stars can watch each haggard face. And so they flit by aimlessly, these outcasts from their kind, and ever seek an outlet where no outlet is to find, save where beneath a high blank wall, with shaken souls they see some useless clothes, a shadow left to hang upon a tree. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Nun by Helen Rootham. I look into your eyes and see eternity. The past has left no shadows there, no broken hopes, no shattered dreams. Waste wreckage of the barren years cumber their depths. No fevered, vain desires, stretching towards the future, cast clouds across their radiance, pure and unsullied. A mirror held in God's own hand, they show me the reflection of the good hour that is, in which your soul doth seek its perfect consummation. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Song by Helen Rootham. Thine is this hour, but mine the happy giving, mine the surrender and the pride of loss. O reckless squandering that gives uncounted treasure! O lavish hour that beggars me! O bliss beyond imagining! Shod with soft meekness, crowned with flaming pride, this hour calls to eternity, vanquishes time. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Press notices of the first number. The Times Literary Supplement. Here we have a little troupe of 9 singers, male and female. They are none of them to be despised as verse writers, but they have not as a body very much in common. The first 5 of them, Osbert and Edith Sitwell, Nancy Cunard, Arnold James, and Iris Tree, certainly share a mood. They are, on the whole, dour and morose. They see nothing bright in the present, and no bright hopes in the future. Osbert Sitwell has grandiose and sinister visions, but in the description of them he tends to o'erleap himself. He leaves an impression of not quite getting the effect he aims at. We should except, however, from this stricture Puero Old and Night. The latter a concise catalogue of darkling images from which one cannot escape. Dark and boding phantoms oppress the mind also of Nancy Cunard, who has not quite so fine an ear for phrase and rhythm as Mr. Sitwell. The deepening gloom of her little group of sonnets closes with a despairing gesture in 2 stanzas called From the Train. Edith Sitwell we have met with before, and have yielded our tribute to the pitiless strength with which she probes human suffering or fashions nightmare shapes and fancies. Her The Mother is a truly harrowing story, and Thais in Heaven a shuddering piece of macabre. Arnold James has only 3 little pieces. He is gloomy, but one feels that one would like to hear more from him. Iris Tree is in a passion with the world. She voices, certainly with eloquence, a feverish desire to escape somewhere along the long road unto nothing, and a dolorous, morbid hopelessness which, as a poetic motif, arouses rather pity than admiration. All this studied and determined melancholy is, however, broken in upon by Mr. E. Wyndham Tennant with the rippling charm of Home Thoughts. And the work of Mr. Tennant, one of the young officers of distinguished talent whom the country has lost, or should we say gained, in the war, is enough to give a real value to this collection. He and Mr. Victor Perowne are certainly the truest poets in the old sense, seekers after a simple, fragrant beauty in the whole company. Mr. Perowne's Lady of Shalott is a beautiful ecstasy, a little reminiscent, oddly enough, of another Tennysonian poem, St. Agnes' Eve, and his Dirge a very musicianly composition. Mr. Sacheverell Sitwell has but one short piece, and Helen Rootham, the 9th contributor, who is much concerned with the issues of life and death, speaks her thought in well-chosen phrase, yet hardly gives us enough to judge her by. She gives us, to close, 3 prose poems from the French of Jean-Arthur Rimbaud. The Morning Post. Some of the poetical new births are certain to arouse the wrath of the mechanic Victorian critics who have not learned that poetry is not a sort of block cosmos, but a living, growing creature. For example, Wheels, which is an anthology of verse by a group of poets with a common confidence in the illuminated word and a common contempt for the look-see of the complacent academic, has aroused a little storm of obloquy. Precious, macabre, Baudelarian are some of the epithets hurled at them, for there is nothing which irritates the hack critic so much as the appearance of a new school of poetry engaged in quietly working out its own conception of the art. In the work presented there is much achievement and more promise, and we have no doubt whatever that, 50 years hence, the publication of Wheels will be remembered as a notable event in the inner history of English literature. Captain Osbert Sitwell's Babel is a triumph in the dark fantastical mode. Indeed, it has the power of Thomson's City of Dreadful Night, and must rank as one of the half-dozen finest war poems. Lieutenant Victor Perowne, whose poetical promise we remarked upon when reviewing a little Eton verse book years ago, is also out of his apprenticeship, while both Arnold James and the late Lieutenant Wyndham Tennant, having something to say, have said it with the mystical tongue of a various sincerity. Of the women poets, Helen Rootham strikes us as the most profound and accomplished, But the highly figured verse of Edith Sitwell: the sounds seemed warring suns, a music flowed as blood. The masked lamps showed tall houses, light had gilded like despair. Black windows, gaping there, is also impressive, and there are striking passages in Iris Tree's long poem of illusion and disillusion. The long road unto nothing I will sing, sing on one note, monotonous and dry, of sameness, calmness, and the years that bring no more emotion than the fear to die. Wheels must be read by all who are studying the way English literature is reacting to the historic storm without, and whether they like it or like it not, the book is certain to have more influence in the future than 1,000 critical brickbats or bouquets. The Oxford Chronicle. The poets who have contributed to this anthology present such identity of mood and even imagery that it might seem that the mood and its emotion had been agreed upon, and was therefore not spontaneous but cultivated, were it not that the common chance which has caught them as fellow victims of a world disease is the obvious fount of each muse, and it is through deriving from water that is, alas, muddied, that the poems are akin. The old traditional loves of the poets are far to seek. This verse does not dance with joy, but shivers with fear, creaks with menace, droops with despair. It is the work, for the most part, of very young people, and it is quite unbearably old. Its revelation is the grim fact that the dead are less dead than the living, that where the war has spared, it has slain. Miss Iris Tree, in particular, who, when she will, can be the easy mistress of the haunting line, and, in her own phrase, catch fancy's fire in the running swiftness of a rhyme, concentrates instead on a fierce mood that invokes the worm that shall come at last to be my paramour, and poises herself on a single note, monotonous and dry. The anthology derives its title from this thought of Miss Nancy Cunard, whose symbolism is further elaborated in the work of Mr. Osbert Sitwell. But Mr. Sitwell is a poet with too much energy for the fantastic symbolism of paper worlds and golden bladders, pantomime and Poirot. In The Beginning, the chaos of creation, and The End, he piles up imagery till it well-nigh baffles apprehension, while in Night and Black Mass he gathers, item by item, into a catalogue the inducings of human terror, and, making music of the evil things of night, leaves us full of that which makes one nigh to dead with fear. Miss Edith Sitwell, though Antic Hay shows how well she can command delight, and The King of China's Daughter that she can be altogether charming, presents for preference a tale like The Mother, of black tragedy, or as in the Lamentation from Saul, verse, like Mr. Sitwell's, of accumulated imagery. Miss Cunard, like Miss Helen Rootham, is conquered happily by her own youth, so that the mood she would induce sits upon her only like the paper cap of one of her 1,000 clowns. For the rest, there are Mr. Sacheverell Sitwell, who has moulded his medium skilfully to his picture; Mr. Victor Tate Perowne, whose loosely woven little poems acquire an added clarity by their nearness to the packed line; and 3 poems, now familiar and prized, from Wyndham Tennant, whose mind and method, philosophy and appeal, were alike foreign to the spirit, so perturbing and provoking, of this anthology. The Lancet. The camps and the trenches during the past 2 years have produced many copies of verses having claim to notice as beautiful poetry, and Wheels, though little of its contents may have been written in the circumstances of war, has an origin similar to that of the rapidly increasing war anthology. It is composed, speaking for its common and essential qualities, of impressions suddenly seized and handed on by writers who are conscious of what has been suggested to themselves and who are determined to share the suggestion with others. The idea of these young poets is that the role of poetry is rather to crystallize fleeting views and aspects, to catch and fix vague and half-formed ideas, than to do any of the brave things associated in popular literature with the title of poet: to lead, to uplift, to amaze. The inspiration of these 9 different writers, different in style, technique, and standard of accomplishment, has been a common one. They strive to show that any impression received by one person should be communicable to others by the medium of symbolic word pictures. We recommend the book to lovers of verse. The Southport Guardian. Of several new anthologies, Wheels is the most distinctive. It is not easy to find the axle, 1916, into which the several spokes of this wheel of verse fit. Indeed, personal friendship rather than poetic kinship would seem to have been the sole condition for admission into the anthology. So here we have songs as diverse as the beautiful Home Thoughts in L'Aventie by the late Honourable E. Wyndham Tennant, to which we have made previous reference, and Osbert Sitwell's wonderfully realistic The Beginning, showing the coming of order out of the chaos of creation, and The End, a vivid picture of slimy horror as the world slips back into the void. Between his picture of night and the rich promise of Poirot Old, a romantic narrative, and 20th century harlequinade. There is a feeling for nature in some of the poems of Arnold James. The consciousness of youth, potentialities, its friendships, and its frustrations are effectively expressed by Helen Rootham, while in the 3 prose poems from the French she shows a subtle appreciation of moods and of words. The most matured and most perfect in feeling and in form are the songs of Iris Tree, especially the If I Were God. With concentrated agony she sings of the dullard masses, the last 4 stanzas of the poem expressing all the disillusion and disappointment of youth with an almost morbid intensity. Poetry, a magazine of verse. This book presents itself in a pleasingly satiric cover, bright yellow, displaying a scraggy nursemaid and a makeshift perambulator. It is the proper sort of inkpot to hurl itself in the face of senile pomposity. Here, however, the gaiety ends, and the contents of the book have none of the lightness of Miss Sitwell's earlier couplet. With children, our primeval curse, we overrun the universe. Of the 9 contributors, Wyndham Tennant has already been claimed by the war. One cannot read his Home Thoughts in L'Aventie without being convinced that his loss is a loss to poetry as well as to those who knew him. It strikes me that real artists who have been plunged into the present inferno have written simply and without rhetoric, without any glorification of war. The poem is written with prose simplicity. With the possible exception of battle-wending, there is no over-decorative word. These properties are of more importance than the very much over-emphasised present question of free and regular verse. Most of the anthology is in older forms. Miss Cunard shows, at times, surprising closeness of thought and a talent for epithets with her dwarfs with slyly pointed steps, and her aged abstractions, love, joy, sin, in solemn, stage-learnt ecstasy. She uses the sonnet, like most poets, at the beginning of their course, without recognising that the sonnet is a peculiar costume. Like duck trousers or a scarlet hunting coat, it is suitable on some occasions, and not quite fitting on others. Few forms, save the classic quantitative measures, are a better drill ground for one's early effort, but a sense of form is not shown by trying to fit matter which is not a sonnet into essentially a sonnet shell. Miss Cunard manages best in the sonnet Uneasiness. Both Sacheverell and Edith Sitwell show promise, the latter using alternate 10 and 6 syllable lines with excellent rhythmic and tonal effect, but with an inexcusable carelessness as to meaning and to the fitness of expression. The anthology closes with some excellent prose translations from Rimbaud by H. Rootham. We would welcome a complete translation in the same manner. E.P. Editor's note. We are in a special bored with male stupidity. From The Condolence by Ezra Pound. Mr. Gossip, the Daily Sketch. But will it be poetry, I wonder? Some Opinions. The Weekly Dispatch. The contents of Wheels, an anthology of verse, suggests that a band of very young and cultured amateurs have conspired together to write poetry. The conspiracy has failed, despite a good deal of dark and sinister language. For instance, one of the conspirators, Osbert Sitwell, has seen the world's doom proclaimed by an evil lichen that is like blood dried brown upon a dead man's face. He has also heard the nauseous flapping of night's bat-like wings, and knows the feeling when, like scaly snakes, the hymn to evil writhes through the subconscious basis of our mind. Some experience. Pull down the sun and burn the fiery moon, cries another of the conspirators, Edith Sitwell, in frank defiance of lunar theories. Later on, when we find that, chafing under the licensing restrictions of the universe, the deserts cry unto the moon for rain, we realise that some new planet has swum into our ken. Victor Perowne knows a place where may be heard the roar of the world rushing down the want ways of the stars, and Helen Rootham modestly admits she is young enough to seize each passing hour and fling it gaily where its fellows lie. Iris Tree, the daughter of Sir Herbert Beerbohm Tree, considers there are songs enough of love, of joy, of grief. So she sings contemptuously, "The dullard masses that no God can save. If I were God, to rise and strike you down and break your churches in an angry wave, and make a furious bonfire of your town." Other results of the deification of Iris Tree would be passion high pedestalled, pangs turned to treasure, perfected and undone and built afresh with concentrated agony and pleasure. If I were God, and not an ounce of flesh. Iris Tree's lurid part in the conspiracy also includes a vision of the evening dipped knee-deep in blood, and a kiss from mouth of the dust, corruption absolute, worm that shall come at last to be my paramour. To Nancy Cunard, daughter of Sir Bush and Lady Cunard, belongs the honour of having given the abortive plot the name which will identify it to literary posterity. She sometimes thinks that all our thoughts are wheels rolling for ever through the painted world, moved by the cunning of 1,000 clowns. This is not, as might be thought at first, a nasty dig at publishers, but merely a poetic fancy of the author, the strength of whose imagination may be judged from the sonnet in which she hears armies of corpses hid behind the wall that creep and grind and tear each other's souls. One feels that a poem containing Cunard lines like these deserves a stronger title than Uneasiness. Nancy Cunard's boldest conspiratorial stroke, however, is the 8 lines headed From the Train. Smokestacks, coal stacks, haystacks, slack, colourless, scentless, pointless, dull. Railways, highways, roadways, black, Grantham, Birmingham, Leeds and Hull. Steamers, passengers, convoys, trains, merchandise travelling over the sea, smut-filled streets and factory lanes, what can these ever mean to me? The answer, of course, judging from the form in which the thesis is presented, is nothing. By the way, the price of the entertainment is £half-a-crown, including tax. Second Thoughts. Wheels, that remarkable anthology of verse containing contributions by Nancy Cunard and Iris Tree, which was reviewed in this column some time ago, now appears in a second edition, soberly garbed in black instead of the eccentric yellow cover of the first issue. Few books of recent verse have inspired so many interesting criticisms, and the authors and publisher have added to the entertaining nature of the volume by reprinting, as an appendix, the critical squawks and grunts that the first appearance of Wheels evoked. The Weekly Dispatch comment is honoured by quotation in full, and one cannot but admire the sporting spirit of the poets who admit all criticism, favourable or otherwise, as a natural corollary of their poetic endeavours. Meanwhile, a fine ironic preface, in blank verse, belabours anew those critics who condemned the book on the ground of bad taste. Mr. Blackwell, the publisher, tells me that he intends to make Wheels an annual production like his Oxford Poetry Series. Published round about Christmas time, it should make an excellent shocker for bachelor aunts and spinster uncles. The Aberdeen Journal. An unsatisfying volume. That there is in evidence considerable poetic ability we willingly confess, but the ability is uncurbed in its choice of subject, and its imagination is unwholesome. The New Statesman. It is rather stupid to put a picture of a nursemaid wheeling a perambulator with a baby in it on the cover. None of the contributors can be quite so young as that. Country Life. Most of them show their youth by taking a most sad and dismal view of this dim spot which men call earth. One laughs. The Lancet. Wheels has no medical aspects whatever. The Pall Mall Gazette. The fetidness of the whole clings to the nostrils. The Literary World. Mr. Osbert and Miss Edith Sitwell we can imagine as anxiously asking themselves, what can we do to be original? The Commonwealth. A readable volume of thoughtful poems by sensible people who are able to write melodious verse and present poetic images while they philosophise about many things. There is not a dull page, and scarcely one which does not, incidentally, picture some charming rural scene as it ponders upon the mysteries, joys, and pains of life. The Athenaeum. Several of the contributors have produced some good work. Everyman. The names of the poets are unfamiliar to us. The Observer. The names speak for themselves. The Sketch. Their names are sufficient to ensure a second edition. The World. The verses are of varying quality. Miss Nancy Cunard is a member of a group of smart society girls. The Observer. The war impulse towards poetry has affected the young intellectuals of society as well as found poets in plainer places. We see a reflection of this in a volume of original verse which Mr. Blackwell announces. Of the fourth volume, all needing to be said is that Captain Bairnsfather writes as well as illustrates it. Bullets and Billets. P.S. The most interesting volumes of verse, if not the best, are at present being issued by Mr. Blackwell. The Weekly Dispatch. End of press notices. Bibliography. Wheels, first volume, 1916, published by B. H. Blackwell. Conceived in morbid eccentricity and executed in fierce, factitious gloom. Pall Mall Gazette. We have no doubt whatever that, 50 years hence, the publication of Wheels will be remembered as a notable event in the inner history of English literature. Morning Post. Aldous Huxley, The Burning Wheel, published by B. H. Blackwell. Without any doubt, an original poet. The Nation. Edith Sitwell, The Mother and Other Poems, published by B. H. Blackwell. In all these poems one thing is clear. They come from within. Miss Sitwell does not describe. She lives in her verse. This very little, therefore, points a long way. The Times. Edith and Osbert Sitwell, 20th Century Harlequinade, published by B. H. Blackwell. Every pretty woman carries a vanity bag into which she puts all her most cherished possessions, from a passionate letter from Flanders to a dinky little pink stick of lip salve. When writers of verses are happy enough To collar publishers they put all the most precious possessions of their hearts into their books, which are vanity bags. This vanity bag is not so pretty. The New Witness. E. Wyndham Tennant. Warple Flit and Other Poems. Published by B. H. Blackwell. Mr. Tennant has an unclouded vision and a blessed gift of direct speech. The Glasgow Herald. Iris Tree. Poems. Privately printed. Sherard Vines. The Two Worlds. Published by B. H. Blackwell. An extremely vivid and charming poet. The Nation. End of bibliography. End of Wheels, the second cycle. Recording by Newgatenovelist, Algy Pug, Eva Davis, and Nemo.